Hello, I haven't really recorded a video based on aspects in a while. I thought it was perhaps a high time to get back down to doing something like that. And we're heading into a heavy astrological climate over the next few days as we approach the end of January. We have several different alignments that are coinciding with each other. And I'm going to talk about these in detail. The main ones being Venus forming a tense angle with Saturn, known as a square being an angle of 90 degrees. We also have Mars and Pluto forming a harmonious angle with each other, but harmonious can sometimes be a bit deceiving to certain people's ears. So I'm going to go a little bit more into how that can sometimes be the case. In addition to that, we have a conjunction between the Sun and Mercury, with Mercury being retrograde. And also looming in the background for a while, we've got an intensifying aspect between Saturn and Neptune, also a square. So let's take a look at each of these using the astrological software that I have. Importance to us in understanding the depth of these aspects are the particular nakshatras or lunar mansions that each of these planets is in. As the one between Saturn and Neptune is intensifying, and it will take a while before it becomes exact, let's first touch on that one, as it's looming in the background and is going to add some color to all the rest. Down here we've got Saturn in Sagittarius and Anuradha, and Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is only in Pisces once every 150 years. So if you're a Piscean, you're in an especially fortunate place in terms of evolution and personal growth, because Neptune is going to be in your sign, for another good 10 to 15 years. And that only happens once every 150 years. But we're talking about the Saturn-Neptune square. So let me not get too distracted into talking about that. Saturn is in a section of Sagittarius that is known as Anuradha. Now, first of all, let's talk about Saturn in Sagittarius. Sagittarian energy ordinarily being very expansive and very fiery. But you've got stable, put on the brakes, let's take the slow approach Saturn within that area of the sky. And it's in a section called Anuradha. Now, Anuradha is actually ruled by Saturn. And quite often with Anuradha, there can be the need for establishing boundaries. Otherwise, there can be the propensity to go too deeply into other, whatever other might be. Sometimes that other can be a particular situation that you're involved. Sometimes it can be a pursuit that you're after. I think in this particular instance, we're talking about an interaction with another individual. And if you're involved in a relationship, this could very much fit in within the realm of relationships. Now, important in understanding how these nakshatras will tend to lend their energy to the planet, it's important to look at something called the Navamsha. Now, the Navamsha chart, among many other things, can be used to understand more of the internal workings or the more subtle energies of the planets in the nakshatras. And Saturn in this particular Navamsha chart is in Taurus. So that's going to make it very stubborn, also sometimes very devoted. That's the positive side of it. Of note to this is the fact that Saturn in Taurus is actually in Venus's sign. So when we get around to talking about Venus, that's actually going to play a role. But let's first talk about Neptune. Neptune is in a section of Pisces that's called Shatabisha. Now, Neptune is very fuzzy-minded. It's also the higher ray of Venus. So that's important to note here, too, that Neptune is the higher ray of Venus. It's higher love. It's devotion. But sometimes there's also the energies associated with Neptune that are illusional and sometimes even delusional. Neptune, quite often when it's functioning in a positive sense, it'll kind of lead us astray, like we're in the woods and we're kind of led astray by the fairies. But eventually we find something that's of great worth to us. And Neptunian processes tend to be very much the same. With Neptune, there's very few boundaries between self and other. The boundaries between self and other are very fuzzy. Now, Neptune is in a section of Pisces, as we were saying, that's called Shatabisha. Now, Shatabisha has a specific deity that's associated with it, like all the other nakshatras do. And the deity that's associated with Shatabisha is Varuna. And Varuna is actually the Vedic equivalent of Neptune. So Neptune in Shatabisha is very powerful energy. And one of Varuna's functions was the revelation of cosmic law. But quite often he revealed this cosmic law or the greater workings of the universe. If you take that on a more microcosmic level, if you kind of get stuck in a situation but you learn something out of it, that would be Varuna's function. He first clouds things over so that he can then later reveal those very same things. That's the energy of Varuna, which is very similar to the energy of Neptune. So in a nutshell, there's a need to establish some sort of boundaries. Potentially in establishing those boundaries, there's the propensity to get a little bit stubborn. The more positive side of that is with those boundaries, you can be very devoted to a specific path or to a specific person. And so at the same time that you're trying to establish those boundaries, you're wanting something to work out on a very specific level. And that's also actually substantiated through Neptune's position in the Navamsha, in a section of the Navamsha that's called Leo. So that's the very essence of the situation, being very devoted to the essence of the situation. But if it's a relationship, being devoted to the essence of the situation is going to mean being devoted to yourself, but also to the other who's involved. And that would be the Leo side of that energy. Now, interestingly enough, prior to Saturn influencing Neptune, and that's going to intensify over the next several days, probably within the next couple of weeks, the Saturn-Neptune square. But Saturn and Venus are very much present right now. Venus is exalted in Pisces, and with Venusian energy in Pisces, there again can be, in terms of relationships, the propensity to have a lack of clear boundaries. In terms of loving oneself, giving so little to oneself, but giving quite a lot to the other. And having a need to be very firm and solid in establishing certain boundaries. But in the process of establishing those boundaries, there can be the propensity to perhaps not take into consideration the feelings of the other and perhaps get a little bit egotistical. If you'll take a look at Venus being in Leo, there can be a pride, a specific pride associated with Venus and Leo. Now, pride and dignity, two things that there can sometimes be, as we're talking Neptunian energy, a very fine line in between. So watching out for one's dignity, taking care of one's needs is one thing, but when you get a little bit proud or arrogant in terms of doing that, then you can kind of spill over into different territory and some difficulties can be created. Now let's take a shift too, and let's take a look at this Mars and Pluto energy. It's a sextile. And I said I was going to talk a little bit about harmonious aspects. Now, really, when two planets are forming a harmonious angle with each other, that just means that those two planets are working together harmoniously in order to create evolution. Dependent upon the nature of those planets, we may feel that energy in not such a harmonious manner. As a matter of fact, it can feel a little bit intense. And when we're talking about Mars and his big brother Pluto, then we're talking about some very passionate energy. And when we take an even deeper look at that, and we recognize that Mars is in a section of Pisces that's called Purva Bhadrapada. So Mars in Pisces, that active, passionate energy can can tend to get a little bit out of control. And when it's in Purva Bhadrapada, well, things can get even steamier because the energy of Purva Bhadrapada tends to elevate and escalate things. And Mars is in the Navamsha of Purva Bhadrapada that's related to Scorpio. So that's even more exceptionally passionate and powerful energy. And Pluto in Capricorn, in a section of Capricorn called Purva Ashadha. Now, Purva Ashadha is about getting down to the nitty-gritty, cutting out the layers of superficiality, getting to the essence that's underneath. And in terms of conversations and connections with others, it's very much related to honest communication, sometimes blunt communication. And Pluto is in a section of Purva Ashadha that's related to Taurus energy. So very firm, very hard energy on some levels, but also energy that's devoted to creating a change and to creating a lasting change that can be of benefit to both parties when you're talking about something that's connected to a relationship, when you're talking about a specific situation you might be involved in, or your way of relating to the universe. It's a need to look at things deeply, but perhaps getting a little bit frustrated with the process. Now, in terms of communication with others, with this energy, there can be a tendency for that communication to get a little bit powerful. The passions can get a little bit high. Speaking the truth is one thing, and speaking your truth is one thing, but it's the delivery and the manner in which you speak it that is of utmost importance to it. And also being willing to listen to what the other one has to say. That's the only way that real change is going to be attained. Now, that being said, we need to move to the next bit, which is the Sun and Mercury in Aquarius, and in a section of Aquarius that's called Shravana. Sun and Mercury in Aquarius. When the Sun and Mercury are close to each other, insight, powerful insight is possible. Ordinarily, when Mercury is close to the Sun, it creates a condition that's called combustion. And that can be a little bit difficult for Mercury. But when Mercury is retrograde, it does not become combust because Mercury is brighter. I believe that when Mercury is retrograde, it's also traveling in front of the Sun rather than passing behind the Sun. So when Mercury is retrograde, it's going to be stronger in its energy, and it's therefore not going to get combust by the rays of the Sun. Now, with Mercury and the Sun in Shravana, Shravana is about listening, being able to tune in. It's going to be in a section of Shravana that's related to Capricornian energy. So a need to be very practical as we're dealing with a Saturnian influence due to being in Capricorn, a need to be stable, a need to put the brakes on and really listen as much as you are speaking to the other and really take things in. With Mercury retrograde, sometimes the energy can seem a little bit fuzzy in terms of communication. Somebody might be saying one thing, but you take it in a completely different manner, and the other person didn't even intend it that way. And it's important to recognize our own feelings in contrast to what the other person might actually be saying. So very much listening is part of the process. People always give Mercury retrograde a very bad reputation, saying it's bad for communication. Well, it's not always necessarily the case. It's just the type of communication that it's more favorable of. Is communication where there's listening, where there's reflection upon the things that you're saying and reflection upon the things that the other person is saying as well. So heading into a very powerful time over the next few days, if you're involved in a relationship, or this can actually be relationships of any sort too. It can be business relationships, friendships, relationships of any types, where there needs to be some type of communication. Be very cautious with the process. Practice empathy for the other person. Listen as much as you speak. Really try to tune into what the other person is saying and really consider what it is that you need to say, because yes, things can have the propensity to be misunderstood right now. Things can be taken the wrong way, and when things are taken the wrong way, passions can escalate. Overall, this is a process, as we're dealing with the Saturn and Neptune side of it, which is leading to a greater sense of power for both individuals involved if it's a relationship, and a greater sense of wisdom and awareness if you're dealing with a particular situation where there's the propensity for getting lost in it. Things ultimately are heading in a positive direction, but you're kind of dealing with a little bit of a fog right now in order to be able to sort through all the challenges and confusion and chaos which might be present in order to have a deeper understanding of truly what it is that you're dealing with. If you'd like to know a little bit more about the particular energies and their influence upon your personal astrology, I do offer a vast range of astrological services which are available through the link which you'll see on this video and also further down on the page. And if you haven't done so already, I do recommend subscribing to my YouTube page so that you can receive regular updates every time a new video is released. That's going to do it for this report on the Venus Saturn square, Saturn Neptune square, Mars Pluto sextile, and Sun conjunct Mercury. So much power within a very brief period of time. Until next time, please do take the utmost care of yourself.